Okay, we are in Unit 2, Chapter 6, Lesson 1, The First Missions. How did conflict in Europe affect Spain's colonies in America? We will learn about how Spain established missions and presidios. I will know the difference between a mission and a presidio. Spanish colonial Texas. The story matters. Father Antonio Margil de Jesus was one of the many religious teachers who ventured into what is now Texas in the 1600s and 1700s. Catholic leaders were determined to bring their faith to the Native Americans. Spain controlled what is now Mexico and Texas, and the Spanish government was committed to this religious work. Religious settlements called missions were a major focus of the Spanish government. Many of the churches and buildings at the heart of these missions still stand. They are visible signs of the legacy of Spain's control. Here's a map of missions found in the 1600s, marked by red, the 1700s, marked by green, and the early 1700s, marked by green, and the mid to late 1700s, marked by purple. European claims in North America. This is all New Spain and this area. In the green is the French controlled. This is British and French, the striped. The yellow British, Canada, and this yellow British colonies. And notice down here in the islands, there are also some by French control and by British control. Angelina, a Texas biography. In 1691, some of the first missionaries in East Texas were introduced to a Hasinai woman who could serve as a guide for the Spanish. They called her Angelina, or Little Angel. Angelina accompanied them to Mexico, where she was baptized and learned Spanish. Since Angelina also spoke many Native American languages, she served as a guide and interpreter for several expeditions throughout Texas. She helped the priests to spread Christianity. Later, she served as an interpreter for French explorers in East Texas. Angelina County in East Texas is named for the Little Angel. It is the only county in Texas named after a woman. The Angelina River, which flows for 110 miles through East Texas, is also named after Angelina. Tours of a Spanish mission. In some ways, missions were like small towns. They provided for the spiritual and physical needs of the people that lived within their protective walls. Many missions had bakeries and blacksmiths in addition to the buildings shown here. This is a typical Spanish mission. Tour of a Spanish mission. Since the chief goal of the mission was to convert Native Americans to Catholicism, the church was the main building. Along with regular mass, religious ceremonies like weddings, baptisms, and funerals were held at the church. The church at Mission Espada in San Antonio is seen here. Terms to know. Conflict, a disagreement or fight. Effect, to act on, to influence. Presidio, a Spanish fort or military post. Friar, a Catholic priest who belongs to a religious order. Council, a group of advisors. European conflicts in American colonies. How did conflict in Europe affect Spain's colonies in the Americas? In the late 1600s, England, the Netherlands, some German states, and Spain wanted to stop France's growing power. They formed what they called the Grand Alliance. A conflict broke out between these allies and France. It lasted from 1689 to 1697. The war affected Spain's North American colonies. These settlements stretched from present-day California to what is now New Mexico. Spain also held Florida. It was divided from Spain's western lands by the Mississippi River, which was controlled by France. The division of its colonies made Spain uneasy. The La Salle expedition had shown that France was interested in Spanish Texas. Spain began to settle the area to protect it from France. They established 3 types of settlements. Mission, built to convert and educate native peoples in Spanish culture and religion. Presidio, a fort built to house soldiers who protected settlers, and town built to house settlers. Spain's rulers were strongly Catholic and wanted to convert others to their religion. These efforts by the Spanish took place in the late 1690s. This was the start of the Spanish colonial era. Spain looks to Texas. Why did Spain want to build missions in Texas? Fearing that La Salle's arrival in 1685 would lead to more French settlements, the Spanish moved fast. As soon as they heard about Fort St. Louis, they sent troops to destroy it. The group was led by Alonso de Leon, and it reached the site on April 22nd, 1689, but it was empty and in ruins. In East Texas, De Leon's troops met the Hasinai people. The Hasinai called the Spanish Tasha, which means ally or friend. The Spanish began to say Tejas to describe the area and its native people. English speakers pronounced it Texas, and that is how Texas got its name. Father Damien Massenet, a friar with De Leon's troops, promised he would come back to the area. A friar is a Catholic priest who belongs to a religious group. The Spanish friars were dedicated to spreading the Catholic faith. Back in Mexico, Massenet asked permission to found a mission among the Tejas, and it was granted. In 1690, Massenet, 3 other friars, and about 100 soldiers set out for East Texas. They founded the first Spanish mission in East Texas on June 1st, 1690. It was named San Francisco de los Tejas. Within a year, a second mission was built. However, the missions had problems. Crops failed, disease killed many Native Americans and some friars. Believing that the church's holy water made them ill, the Tejas rejected Catholicism. They also did not like the Spanish trying to change how they lived. In 1694, Spanish officials decided to abandon the mission because the French were no longer interested in the area. However, San Francisco de los Tejas accomplished 2 things. Almost 10 years later, Spain founded another mission in Texas, San Juan Bautista, built in 1699. It was located 35 miles from the Rio Grande. Soon the Spanish decided to move the mission and its colony much closer to the Rio Grande, where there was better access to water. Over time, San Juan Bautista grew. It had 3 missions, a presidio and a town. Its location near important roads into Texas made it a stopping point for travelers. The soldiers of the presidio protected travelers and supply trains and fought Native Americans when necessary. The mission provided grain, cattle, and horses to the other settlements. San Juan Bautista was also a listening post for news about French. I'll go back to this graphic. These were the accomplishments of San Francisco de los Tejas. They strengthened Spain's claim to Texas and showed Spain that a colony needed families to settle land. Okay, back down here. By 1699, the French again posed a threat. Once more, they were exploring west of the Mississippi River. They focused on trading blankets, guns, and wine for furs and skins from Native Americans. The French also hoped to trade with merchants in Mexico. However, Spanish law banned foreigners from trading with their colonies. Still, trade was a necessity in the wilderness. Native Americans and settlers in Texas ignored the law. One of San Juan Bautista's missionaries was Father Francisco Hidalgo. He was a friar who had known the Tejas people at San Francisco de los Tejas. For years, he asked Spanish officials to rebuild the mission for the Tejas. Desperate, Hidalgo wrote a letter to the French governor of Louisiana. He asked the French to build a mission among the Tejas. The letter was sent in secret without Spanish officials' permission. The French governor liked Hidalgo's proposal. It was a chance to open trade with Native Americans and the Spanish settlements in Texas. He appointed Louis de Saint-Denis Denis to negotiate with Spanish officials on the Rio Grande. Saint Denis and a small party left for San Juan Bautista, arriving in July 1714. The unexpected arrival of the French alarmed the Presidio's commander. He arrested Saint Denis and sent him to Mexico City for questioning. Saint Denis insisted that France had no plans to take over East Texas. The Spanish viceroy and his council or group of advisors did not believe him. Which of the following best defines the Spanish colonial era? Spain built missions, presidios, and towns to protect its claim to North American colonies. Which Catholic church founded the first mission in East Texas? Father Damien Massanet. What was the key to San Juan Bautista's growth as a settlement? Its location near a water source and important crossings into Texas. Why did the Spanish feel that the French posed a threat again? In 1699, the French had settled in Biloxi Bay and were exploring the West. Why did Father Hidalgo ask for help from the French governor in Louisiana? He wanted to rebuild the mission at San Francisco de los Tejas.